Good morning, everyone. We are going to begin here promptly at 10:30, so we're going to get started. A couple of reminders up on our screen. If you've been on our webinars before with Early Learning Indiana, these are going to be very familiar, but just so that you know, all attendees are muted in order for us to ensure audio quality throughout our presentation today. But we are interested in hearing from you as we go, especially questions that you may have for myself and some of our guests today. So if you do have questions as we go throughout, please type those into the question bar on the right hand of your screen, and that way we're able to address any of your concerns or thoughts and get back with you. We will have a recording of this broadcast available within 24 hours of now on the webpage for our Stronger Together grant, and that is earlylearningin.org/stronger-together. So let's get started with what we're here for today. We are here today to talk about our Stronger Together grant initiative that Early Learning Indiana has available right now, and specifically to understand more about what shared services are and promising practices across the nation and here locally in our own backyard when it comes to shared service hubs. So during our time together today, we will be sharing some information about the Stronger Together grants, just to recap and make sure everyone understands what this opportunity is. And then I'm going to be inviting on to join us some very special guests, our TA partners for the Stronger Together grant from Opportunities Exchange. And they will be going through with all of our participants the idea of really shared service hubs 101. What are we talking about with shared services, and what could they mean for your community and the providers that are serving families and children in your local neighborhoods? We're going to round out our time together today with some next steps, sharing some key dates that you'll want to be aware of if your organization is considering applying and submitting a proposal for a Stronger Together grant. And then, as always, give ample time to questions that you may have so that you can feel assured that any questions you may have about Stronger Together can be answered. So for those of you who have not met me yet, I am Natalie Brake with Early Learning Indiana. I'm the email that you see at the bottom of the screen. So if you do have any questions that we are not able to answer today, or you're thinking about one later, you can always email me at natalieb@earlylearningindiana.org if you have questions about the Stronger Together grant or what we do at Early Learning Indiana. If you didn't know what we do at Early Learning Indiana, we activate and educate an ecosystem of stakeholders to create accessible, high-quality early education opportunities for children in our state. It is amazing work, and those of you who are early learning providers yourself know how important this work is. We practice what we teach every single day in our high-quality early learning centers across the greater Indianapolis area, where we are advancing the science of early learning, where we are training the next generation of teachers, and where we are helping instill essential skills in the early learners in our community. We share what we know as an expert partner, enabling other early learning partners and providers to build on your capacity, transform your operations, and improve learning outcomes. Those words sound familiar because they are a really important part of our Stronger Together grant opportunity. Transforming operations and improving learning outcomes is exactly what we're trying to do with our Stronger Together grants across our state. And thirdly, Early Learning Indiana helps drive system level change. We want to be able to address barriers to accessible, affordable, and high quality early education for all Hoosiers and for all children. If you have any questions about what Early Learning Indiana does, or you want to talk with me more about them, you can reach out to me, again, through the email there at the bottom of the screen, or phone, or any other way we'll have listed at the end. So let's recap for everyone what the Stronger Together grant opportunity is. We know that the shared service movement in early childcare and education is really rooted in this singular idea that when you invest in the business and pedagogical capacity of the adults who support the children each day, then you can more effectively improve the learning outcomes than when you simply deploy child interventions alone. Shared service, thus, is really rooted in the fact that adult learnings impact children's learnings, and we want to have the best possible impact for the children in our care. By combining forces and sharing the cost of resources across multiple sites, time and cost savings can be redirected from the operations then towards investment in teachers, strengthening workplace environments, and improving wages and benefits, all goals that I would assume everyone participating in this webinar would agree with. To support early care and education, really we have to have long-term solutions, not just short-term fixes. So Early Learning Indiana, with generous support from the Lilly Endowment, Inc., is going to be awarding eligible organizations with up to $100,000 to launch regional shared service hubs. That is the core of the work for the Stronger Together grant. By the time the grant is finished, we will have new shared service hubs that are supporting the providers and local communities across the state. So we spoke last time a little bit about what we were going to be doing for our shared service hubs and some elements like that. But now today we're really going to get into the meat of what are some of the shared services, what could it mean, how do you do them, all of those types of questions. And luckily for all of you, I am not the person who gets to answer that for you. Instead, I've invited along two of our guest speakers in order for us to really get the information straight from the experts. So our experts today are joining us from Opportunities Exchange, which is a nonprofit consulting group founded in 2009 to facilitate change in the early care and education field. By providing training and technical assistance around new ECE business models, including shared service alliances, and by shaping public policy and finance to incentivize implementation of these models, very crucial, OpEx works nationally to promote business sustainability as a core component of quality. I'm excited today to welcome on Sharon Easterling, who's going to be presenting in just a few moments. Sharon is a member of the Opportunities Exchange consulting team, supporting community-based shared service initiatives and working to expand the utilization of business automation tools in the early childhood sector. She brings to this work 25 years leading the NACCE affiliate organization in Philadelphia, the Delaware Valley Association for the Education of Young Children. Throughout her career, Sharon has created programs and services to improve the quality and supply of early childhood services and advocated for policy and funding to better serve children and families. Sharon earned a BS in elementary education from the University of Maryland and a Master of Divinity from Eastern Baptist Theological Seminary. Also joining us today is going to be Amy Friedlander, who is an independent early childhood consultant. Based in Philadelphia, Amy provides training, coaching, and consultation to early childhood providers around business and administrative practices, strategic planning, and human resources. Amy is a partner with Opportunities Exchange and provides consultations to shared service alliances and staffed family childcare networks that are launching and expanding throughout the country. Amy supports Pennsylvania efforts devoted to building education pathways for early childhood educators and has expertise in early childhood apprenticeship models, career and technical education CDA models, and higher education articulation. I have to tell you that these two amazing people are some of the smartest people I have ever met when it comes to understanding the business of early childhood and how to support providers in that business. So with that being said, I'd love to welcome Sharon on. Amy's going to be helping me behind the scenes, answering some questions in our questions bar as they come up. And Sharon's going to be presenting for us on Shared Services 101. Sharon, if you want to go ahead and join us, and I will give you permission to be able to share your screen instead of me. Sharon, are you able to join us?
Okay, yes, something locked. Let's see, hold on one second. Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen, wonderful.
Fabulous, okay. All right, so let's get started. And do you have video? I'm not sure if I'm controlling it or if you are, Natalie. Can you see me and do you need to see me?
I can help with that, Natalie.
Okay, thank you, Carrie.
There we go.
Carrie is our technical support. There she is, wonderful. Okay, I'm going to give Sharon the camera and the mic and let you take it away.
Great, thanks so much, Natalie. It's actually really been wonderful to reconnect with Indiana. I had the pleasure last year of coming out to your business summit and doing a presentation on shared services. We did an intensive workshop together, and I know that folks all across the state are really interested in this issue. And so now to have the opportunity to actually implement a lot of these ideas is pretty exciting. So let's talk about shared services. We are increasingly understanding in the face of a pandemic that the early care and learning system in our country needs more than tweaking, right? That we really have to think about new ways of doing things, because the old ways were never great, but now that we've been facing the additional pressures brought on by COVID, we just know that this is not sustainable. Costs are up, enrollments are down, and we need to address the problem at some of the root causes. So it's not enough just to sort of throw money out there and say, here's a little money to get you through the next few weeks or months. We have to really think about how we operate early care and education programs. And we really think, and we're starting to see that the challenges that we are facing as a field, the challenges brought on by the pandemic are opening up some doors of opportunity for us to rethink this system. So what is shared services? Shared services is an approach to management and leadership that is designed to help childcare businesses achieve financial sustainability and really focus on the goal as we make these businesses more sustainable, as we free up resources, particularly to invest in our teachers and our early childhood professionals. That's going to help us get to stronger child outcomes. Shared services builds capacity by identifying the common needs and creating a structure that will allow sort of the best business performance that we can get. At Opportunities Exchange, these are our core values. This is what we believe. And it's important for you to know that what drives us is a deep, deep concern that we do better by all of our children, and especially those children who are at risk from the effects of poverty and other risk factors. We know that early childhood education changes lives, but it only does that if we're able to offer children high quality settings. And so we believe that every director deserves an administrative team, that every teacher deserves pedagogical leadership, and that every child deserves a reflective teacher. So let's think about what this could look like in Indiana. We also want you to know that shared services is about systemic change. A lot of times when people first hear the term shared services, they think about things like group purchasing, finding discounts. Shared services is really about systemic change. We believe that by reforming the way we do the business of early childhood, that we can actually address inequities. When we give providers the tools to succeed and to run strong, sustainable businesses, that's addressing a basic inequity, right? And when we strengthen the leadership pathways so that teachers don't have to choose between doing work that they love and providing for their families, when teachers and ECE professionals have opportunities for growth and career pathways, that's addressing inequity. We know that shared services can help to improve compensation, as we've already said, by moving resources from administration, from things that we don't need to be spending money on into teacher wages, and also creating better work settings for teachers. When teachers have not only better wages and benefits, but when they have time off the floor to think and plan, when they have a team of people to support them thinking and planning about how they work with children, that creates better work environments. And then stabilizing businesses through all of the strategies that we're gonna talk about in a minute. So we believe that we need to address both pedagogical leadership and business leadership. When we can run stronger businesses. And when we can give directors and teachers the gift of time to focus on what they do best, which is working with young children and families, that's our pathway to high quality early childhood education. And it's worth noting that for family childcare providers, everything falls on their shoulders, right? We expect them to be engaged, supportive teachers. We expect them to work with families. We also expect them to be able to manage and run their business. And it's a never-ending job. And so for home-based providers, shared service networks can really offer, can be a game changer for their ability to do this work and stay in it for the long term. Shared services enables scale and sustainability. Over in this box, you see the list of possible services that a hub can offer, and the graphic image, which sort of shows you how the network hub is able to take on these back office administrative tasks. And not only does that mean that the tasks get done with more efficiency, with greater skill, but it also means that the education professionals now have more time to focus on what they do, which is, again, working with children and families. Shared services takes on many different forms. It's a framework. And so in every community, shared services work best when they're meeting the needs of folks in that community. So in every shared service situation, the hub could be a slightly different entity, right? Sometimes it is a large child care center. Sometimes it's a human service nonprofit agency. It could be a resource and referral entity. The key ingredient is the hub having a relationship with and trust with providers. Sometimes hubs are only centers, sometimes they're only family child care, and sometimes they're a mixture of both. Sometimes a hub will focus on a specific demographic component group in the community. It really varies depending on the community needs. When the shared services movement first got started, a little more than a dozen years ago, one of the tasks that Opportunities Exchange helped to shepherd was creating an online platform that would be a place to store all of the common resources that we need. And in Indiana, you have the Indiana Early Learning Hub, which is hosted by, I'm not going to get the term right, but it's ambassadors. I think it's ambassadors. I'm close, I know that. Anyway, you have the hub now in Indiana, which is really exciting because the Early Learning Hub is a place that where all of the tools for running your business, all of the time-saving tools, the templates, the best practices tools are here for taking, 24/7 available to the community. And that really helps support and give the resources that allow the hub then to be able to support and surround programs with the resources that they need. So I want to show you a couple of examples just to emphasize the point that a shared service hub can look different in different places. So in Chattanooga, Tennessee, there's an organization called the Chambliss Center for Children. And they are an organization that's been around for decades. Their primary mission initially was to be a residential home and treatment facility for children with high needs. And they ran that program really well. They started offering child care services, and they had such a strong reputation that about 20 years ago, the United Way came to them and said, you know, we have some child care programs in our community that are in deep financial distress. And we wonder if you could help them, maybe by helping to run their business so that they could continue to offer services. And it was one of the very first shared services projects that ever started. Chambliss came on board and worked with the board of directors for several of these programs. They have now expanded so that they have contracts with, well, on here it looks like about 5, but I think they might even have like 8 programs now that they work with. So they are the hub. They offer the service themselves, and then they take all of the things that they do, billing, enrollment, professional development, all of those services, and then they offer those to each of these centers. They also have, you see down on the left-hand side, a micro center network, which means that there are a number of public schools, actually 13 public schools, that have opened up a classroom so that they can offer a one classroom program that serves the teachers in that building. And what's really key about making that work is they can do it at very affordable cost, because you see the director, all the administration, everything is done in the back office. So the only thing that classroom really has to support is the cost of the teachers and the administrative costs, which are kept really low because of that back office support. So that's one way to do it. It's a very comprehensive approach, and it has it now serves 600 or 800 kids there in Chattanooga. Runs really well. Here's an example of an emerging project that's getting started out in Nebraska. So the Nebraska EduCare project that runs out of Omaha and Lincoln has formed this entity called the Nebraska Early Childhood Collaborative, and they're focused on home-based providers. This is a page from their brochure, and you can see the way they're approaching shared services is by offering various levels of services to providers. And they actually really see this as kind of an on-ramp. This happens to be a very well-resourced organization, the EduCare system out in Nebraska. And so they're able to offer a really rich array of services to home-based providers that will eventually take these providers to using an online platform, WonderSchool, to operate their business. They're going to be supporting tax prep, be doing mentoring. So it's a really robust project. And this is an example from Colorado, and I wanted to show you this because this is actually a large childcare program that's been operating for over 100 years. Early Connections in Colorado Springs started literally around the turn of the last century as an orphanage. Actually, they served children who were orphaned because of an epidemic that swept through the state. And then they started offering day nursery services. Some of you are familiar with the day nursery movement. So they've been around for a really long time. About 10 or 12 years ago, the executive director there, Diane Price, started getting interested in the shared services work. And Diane realized that they were not operating their own program with shared services principles. And what I mean by that is they had, 6 or 8 sites in different locations across the city. And every single one of those sites, the director was doing the enrollment. The director was doing marketing. The director was doing billing. All of those things that were getting repeated over and over in different ways in kind of a chaotic fashion. So Diane began to implement shared services principles. She began to pull all the administrative tasks into the primary office and was able then to say to the directors, you've been hired as an educator. We're going to do the billing. We're going to do the marketing. We're going to enroll families. We're going to begin to standardize all of that here. And what we want you to do is to go out and focus on supporting your teachers and working with families. So instead of hassling with paper and record keeping, the directors are actually now mentoring the teachers in the program and doing home visits with families and really focus on being the pedagogical leader in each of those sites. So not only are they doing better in the way of quality, but their business metrics improved as well because they're really now able to stay on top of keeping classrooms fully enrolled and full collections and all of those things that really make the difference. Once they got that house in order, then Early Connections began reaching out, and they created a family childcare network where family childcare providers are able to benefit from these services as well. They also have in the works creating these micro centers that patterned on the Chattanooga example that I just talked about. The reason they're still, and this is just to say the best laid plan. So about 2 years ago, Diane worked really hard on this micro center plan, and then the superintendent of schools changed just as they were about to launch it. So she's having to sort of rebuild that plan, which is to say that this is a journey that has many twists and turns. But these are all different and I think really interesting examples. So what's unique about shared services? One of the things we really want you to hear and understand is that shared services is really about power with and not power over. A lot of the work that we have done around quality improvement and professional development in our sector has been about, in the past, has been about compliance, has been, we're going to come out and observe your classrooms, and we're going to give you a score and, you know, and give you a grade basically, and tell you how you're doing. What that does is it has a tendency to create a culture of compliance. And so this is not about, you know, we're the hub and we're going to come and see how well you're running your business. Rather, shared services is about saying, we want to build some expertise. We want to build shared expertise and make that available to you, highly skilled financial services that you can tap into at a cost that's less than what you're paying for right now. We're going to make that available to you. We're going to work with you, and together we're going to understand how our businesses are running and how we can make them stronger. Another thing about shared services is it focuses on the iron triangle of ECE finance. If you've ever heard Louise Stoney speak, you know about the iron triangle, right? The 3 business principles that are fundamental and foundational to a sustainable business. And very, very simple concepts, not so easy to do every single day. And those concepts are full enrollment. You've got to fill every seat every day. Full fee collection, you've got to figure out and know everything that's owed to you and make sure that you are collecting every dollar that needs to come through the door. And you need to understand your cost per child. We'll say more about that as we get through, but what a lot of people don't really understand is that per child cost changes all the time. If you have a classroom that's only 70% full, you're paying for the same teachers, but you have less money to fund those students in the classroom, right? So your cost per child just went way up versus if that classroom were full. A lot of program directors struggle to understand the real difference between the cost of their infant room versus their preschool room. And they know it costs more to take care of children, but what actually is that actual cost? And getting our arms around that can help us make good decisions. And the iron triangle actually leads us to the third point, which is that technology is foundational. You cannot have a shared services hub that's offering deep, impactful services if every member of that hub is not using business software to collect data electronically. If people are still using paper and pencil, and the vast majority of providers are not using or fully utilizing childcare management software, it's just impossible to really run your business efficiently and run it well, run it in top form. So this work has got to embrace technology. If you're thinking about being a hub, you're going to have to select a childcare management software, which will be the way in which you collect data. I actually just saw a report this morning out of a big project that they're doing in North Carolina with family childcare providers, and they asked them how they bill parents. 80% of the providers said that they prepare a paper invoice once a month. The remaining 20% of the providers in this group said they don't even send an invoice at all. Think about the amount of time and effort that it takes to prepare paper, to track money, to do all of those things manually, and then think about the impact of not even creating an invoice. How can you possibly be on top of your business metrics if you're not able to get your arms around it through the power of automation? And then finally, using shared services, using technology, having administrative support. I've said this 3 times, and I'll say it 30 more probably, helps teachers and directors and family childcare providers focus on the business of education. Gives them time to think about what are they trying to do with their children, what's happening with those kids, and how can I really bring my practice to meet each child's best need. And so often we rob ourselves of the time to be able to do that because we're running around trying to keep our head above water administratively. Again, technology is at the heart of this. You cannot do deep, impactful shared services if you're not using a childcare management system. At OpEx, we spent a lot of time building relationships with different software vendors, helping them understand what's needed for shared services, and helping providers understand what they should be expecting to get out of their software. And we will be here through this project to also help you think through those questions. So what does success look like? I'm going to show you a couple of slides that actually come from real numbers. So there was a small faith-based program that joined an alliance in the last couple of years. They served about 60 kids. And as the program, and interestingly enough, the program was using childcare management software. They were using ProCare. But like many, many providers, they were kind of using ProCare, if you know what I mean. They weren't collecting money with tuition. They weren't collecting money online. I'm not even sure they were doing billing online. They were sort of, limping along with the use of their software. So the back office hub came in and got them fully operational on the system, on ProCare. They worked with them they took information from the accounting system, which I think they were using QuickBooks. So they used QuickBooks and they used ProCare data, and they started to run the numbers for this program for them to understand what was going on, to better understand the business metrics of this program. One of the first things that popped up was when they looked at their personnel budget, they saw that in large part because they weren't using automation tools, they had a lot of people on staff that were doing things like collecting paper attendance sheets, preparing payroll from staff would sign in and out, and then somebody would have to take all of those timesheets on paper and transfer those into another system and prepare them for payroll. Similar with attendance. Similar thing with bills. They were sending out paper invoices, and then families would pay, and they would have to, prepare all of the checks for deposit, go to the bank. A lot of people on the payroll. What did that look like? Well, look over on the left. Half of their payroll budget, less than half of their payroll budget was being spent on staff, 48%. They, like every other provider in the country, were really struggling with how to pay good salaries to their teachers. The hub was able to show them just almost right out of the door how they could reduce their overhead costs. So between January of 2018 and December of 2018, they had begun to make some changes. So they were able, instead of spending 48% of their personnel budget, they moved that number to 62. And I have to tell you, there were more changes to come. They were just going slow because they had some folks on staff who had been there for a while. So they were in the process of kind of moving people into other positions, moving people out that were no longer needed. And eventually the goal was to get that number, 75% of their personnel budget being spent on staff. What happens when you free up those resources? Well, I'll tell you what they did. Their board of directors gave every staff member a raise. They increased the contribution to their healthcare plan, and they created retirement accounts and began making contributions for teachers. So they took the pot of money and they immediately reinvested it in their teachers. Here's what it could look like for a family child care provider. Over on the right-hand side, you see what happens if a provider is not collecting, not setting their rate. So percentage of market tuition captured. Without support in figuring out what you should be charging, a lot of providers will undercharge. So in this case, the provider is charging about 90% of what they could and should be charging for their service. They're not able to stay completely full. And so when a child leaves, it takes several weeks or a month to fill that slot. So they have about a 75% enrollment rate or a 25% vacancy rate. They're also not collecting all of the tuition that's owed. Again, staying on top of it, not sending out invoices. So you can see the column on the left shows when you can price your services right, when you can drive that vacancy rate down to 5%, so that you're about 95% full. And when you're able to collect all of the money that's owed you, look at the difference in earnings for a provider from $23,000 annually to $47,000. So we're talking about real money here that can make a real difference. So we want you to hear, and you're going to continue to hear this from us, shared services, in order to make a difference, it has to go big. It has to take on the big challenges. So that means the only way that you get to big results is by having big change. That means you've got to fully implement a child care management system. You've got to leverage back office business expertise, and you have to streamline your administrative staff. If a child care program, an early learning program, will do those things, there will be results. And I've already talked to you about some of the results. I haven't talked a lot about the time savings, but in that case study that I talked about with that small faith-based program, that was just the beginning of the change. The director, who was no longer having to do administrative work, was able to free up 17 hours a week that she could now, more than 2 days a week, that she was focused on coaching and working with her teachers. It was a sea change for that program. So what makes for a successful hub? First of all, the hub has to be driven to do this work by a sense of mission. This is not a money-making deal. You can do this work for cost. You don't have to, and you shouldn't lose money on it, but it is not a way to enhance revenue for a nonprofit organization. It's got to be deeply rooted in the mission of what you are trying to do as a nonprofit organization. You have to be really well run yourself. If you want to be a hub, you've got to be fiscally sound. You've got to be committed to efficiencies, to effective practice. You've got to like really practice what you preach, if you will. You have to be willing to innovate, and that means being willing to take on some risk thoughtfully and in a calculated way, but you've got to be willing to be an innovator, to be a thought leader. Board and leadership absolutely has to be on board 100% supportive. You've got to have effective qualified staff, and you've got to have or figure out how to build trust with the early childhood community in short order. What makes a successful member? First of all, you have to be committed to quality for children and families. You've got to be open to new ways of doing things. Fortunately, the times that we're living in kind of open up the door. They sort of crack open the door to opportunity. And so we have a moment like we've never had before. You have to be willing, if you're a home provider or a director of a program that's thinking about participating in a shared service alliance, you have to be willing to open up your books to share all of your program information. You have to have supportive board and leaders in your organization. You've got to be dissatisfied with the way things are right now. You've got to be really committed to saying that, you know, we're going to find a new way. And in the center of both of these graphics actually is this business of change. You've got to be willing to change. You've got to be willing to lead change. You've got to be willing. My favorite line about change actually comes from the Colorado example I gave you. Diane Price says, whenever she introduces a new idea to her staff, because you heard me describe this complete change and how they do things. She says, let's try it for some period of time. Let's try it. And if it doesn't work, we can go back to the old way. That's a technique that she has learned to pull her staff along with her in trying in moving toward change, in being able to embrace change. So change is really at the heart of this. So moving forward, some things that you're going to want to start thinking about. What are the most pressing needs in our early learning community that can be addressed by shared services? What things are happening that can be centralized? And what things are best decentralized? We want to start thinking about who might be a good candidate to participate. Where am I looking to organize this effort? You've got to make a commitment to automation. We highly recommend some of the CTMS tools that are on the market right now. They're good and getting better and getting more affordable all the time. And we want you to start thinking about impact. How are things going to be different 1 year from now if we're successful? And how are you going to know? How are you going to measure success? So I'm going to turn it back over to Natalie. You're going to have lots of ways and lots of opportunities to be in touch with us, but we want to take a few minutes and see what questions you might have. We'll try to address some of them now, and we will be here as we go through this process to address questions. Natalie?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and take back control of the screen, so it'll take me just a second because I'm slow. I have to click all the things. And you guys all know with these platforms, it takes a little bit to be able to do. So you all can tell me if I got it right there and if you are seeing our timeline slide now.
Yep, we see it.
Okay, excellent. Well, before we get into the questions, I first just have to say, I think everybody can understand now why we invited Opportunities Exchange along with us to help partner and provide TA for this opportunity. It is because they bring with them such a wealth of knowledge and experience, and they truly understand what it takes for organizations within communities to launch and to successfully implement these shared service hubs, and ultimately to be able to impact what providers are able to do and how they offer services. So we are very, very excited to have them along to help us out with this opportunity. We know that there may be many additional questions coming up, and I buried the lead a little bit, but if you look here, there's some important stuff happening in the next few weeks. But the big thing that's happening is that the RFP is open right now. So if you go to the opportunity website, the grant website, you will be able to go over to our submittable platform and see the RFP right now. I already checked this morning once it went open, and it looks like there's at least 3 people who have started or begun looking at the RFP, and I'm anticipating many more over the next few weeks looking at all the pieces there. So take a look at that. That is open now. And in order to really answer questions and dive into what we're looking for in that RFP, we will be hosting another webinar next Thursday, the 28th. We will be walking through that RFP piece by piece. We'll be talking about the different components that Early Learning Indiana is looking for, allow you to ask questions on those. And we'll also have Sharon on with Opportunities Exchange to talk about some of the resources or the expertise they can share. You'll also note, if you're on the webpage for Stronger Together, that there are some resources for applicants coming from the minds of Opportunity Exchange and their experiences and their networks. They were able to help Early Learning Indiana really hone on some of the questions you may have around things such as, what are sample shared service metrics we might want to do when we're looking for our hub? Spoiler, that's asked for in your RFP. So those assets are available right now on the fund webpage in order for you to understand and craft the best possible responses that will truly meet the needs of your community. We also have 4 upcoming opportunities of office hours, 2 in February, February 4th and 18th, and 2 in March, March 4th and 18th, where you will get the combined expertise of Sharon, Amy, and me. I'm the little part of that expertise, but the big part coming from Sharon and Amy on for some open office hours. And we would encourage anybody, if you have questions around the Stronger Together opportunity, what it could mean for your community, any questions about the RFP as you truly get into writing your proposals with your organization and your partners, to join us on those open office hours to ask questions or to hear other ideas. The proposals will be due on March 19th, so we do have that one final office hour right before proposals are due if you have any last minute questions. And then we will be announcing those participants who have received their awards in April. So let's get into it now. Any of the questions anybody may have for me, for Sharon? I want to note a couple that came through our questions bar that I do want to make sure to get to. So one of them, first of all, is Sharon, it's Ambassador Enterprises. I could not think of it either. And I was thinking, I was like, there's another word there. That's what it is, but that is the organization. Right. Yes, that is helping to run Indiana Early Learning Hub. And they are definitely, like many of the other examples that were shared today, open to questions. So I know we're looking at promising practices, things that we can build on. So would definitely encourage any potential applicants or organizations who are exploring the option or the opportunity to create a hub to consider examples that already exist and what you could learn from them. Reach out if there's a need for that. Another question we had come in is, will the slides be available? The slides actually are available right now. They are on the fund webpage as well under that resources for applicants. The resources that are available there, there's Shared Services 101, which is the slide deck that Sharon just shared, because it has all of that information that really helps. And I know many of you may be wanting to go back and discuss it with your team. So we went ahead and made that available, along with those sample business metrics, a shared service hub checklist, and a sample hub budget, which I will tell you is one of the ones that I was most excited to see, because I think the budget is going to be one of the areas we'll have lots of questions on as we walk through the RFP next week. So I'd love to open it up to anybody else to see if there are any other questions for me as it relates to the Stronger Together opportunity itself, or for Sharon and Amy as it relates to understanding shared service hubs and what you could possibly do.
Natalie, I just want to call out, there was a question in the question box about
Mhm.
policy. But it was an excellent question. Here we are sort of encouraging you to think really big and make some big changes. And we know that government sometimes lags behind big innovation. So the issues that you pointed out in this question, the licensing regulation or quality rating improvement system kind of standards around how do we define a director, when are we required to have a director, what their credentials are, those definitely can be stumbling blocks. We are available to support you as you think about how to address those. I think, the Early Learning Indiana initiative here is already thinking very big and is hoping to certainly fund more than one shared service alliance. And so I think you already have some power in numbers if it means that there are some advocacy efforts that need to happen at the state level. So as I indicated, we struggle with these all the time, from the very mundane in terms of how can I use an automated system if you're requiring me to show you wet signatures in order to do invoicing, right? So we have these kind of barriers every place along the continuum, from invoicing to signing contracts to preventing fraud, abuse, and neglect, to really big issues like how do we really make use of all the expertise that we need in the most efficient way possible. So I just think it shows really a great understanding of shared services to have asked that question. And I think, write that RFP, and we want to work alongside you to try to tick away at those.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks, Amy, that's a great answer. And I would just add to that, if you identify something that you think is a big stumbling block, we want to flag it. And again, across all of the efforts, I think we could do some good advocacy work, but there are a lot of other places. So if issues around a director, a site-based director is a problem, then work on something else, right? So there are lots of things that you can do, actually some low-hanging fruit, and then let's sort of, as the tagline says, we're stronger together. Then let's lift up together the things that are going to take a little more work and a little longer haul.
I think that's a great perspective to look at it. And I do want to reassure everyone is that Early Learning Indiana is not expecting that these shared service hubs are going to fix every issue for every early childcare provider in the regions you're targeting, much less the regions that you're not. However, we do think it's really important for you to understand the regions you're targeting, the needs of the providers, and to be able to offer services that will begin to make a difference in the way they approach both their operations and their pedagogical practices. And because of that foundation that's created with these shared service hubs, there's the potential to launch additional pieces to add on to that and to continue to do it in an effort. But I do want to make sure, because I do know a couple of people who are on here, and I know that we are incredibly passionate about ensuring that all barriers to access to high quality, affordable childcare are eliminated. Early Learning Indiana continues to strive towards that mission for all Hoosier children and all children. However, we will not accomplish that singularly with this. So focus on the best first steps that you can take with these hubs. And I think you'll see that reflected in the way we have the RFP set out, is that understanding of what you can do now in order to build on in the future. One of the other questions that popped up is, where can you get the link to the RFP? So you can get directly to the link to the RFP from the grant webpage, which is earlylearningin.org/stronger-together. So if you check that out right now, you'll be able to see those additional pieces that we talked about. You'll be able to go directly to the RFP and get your questions answered there. Before we close up here or see if there's any other questions, there's one other piece that I really want to stress and share with everybody who is participating with us right now. Early Learning Indiana understands that this is a very important, but also very difficult undertaking that we are asking people to do. We are asking you to create, to launch, to conceptualize, to implement all of these ideas, come together in a strong proposal, and then create these early learning hubs, create these resource hubs in your communities. If you look at the RFP and realize that you do not currently have all of the answers ready and able to do the pieces there are many resources available to you. Those are those assets on the web page. There's our office hours. Reach out directly to me for questions. We purposefully engaged with Opportunities Exchange because we want to use them for their expertise. We need you to ask the questions. We also consider and look at the fact that when you do submit your RFP, there may still be some sections that you say, we think we've got this, but we're not sure. Or we're 50% of the way there. We came to some of the office hours. Now we're 70% of the way there, but we still have some questions. We think this could be tighter. It is okay for our applicants to note places where they need a little bit more assistance in their proposal. None of us are experts right now, except for Amy and Sharon, when it comes to the creation of these shared service hubs. We're not assuming and we're not anticipating that our organizations who may potentially apply for Stronger Together are going to become experts in the implementation of shared service hubs over the next few weeks. We do want you to submit a strong proposal, an accurate proposal, and a proposal that shows your knowledge of the region you're targeting, the providers you're targeting, and the services that could benefit them. We're not expecting perfection. So as you look at the RFP, and I encourage all of you to take a good look at the RFP over the next week prior to our RFP walkthrough webinar, keep in mind that Early Learning Indiana and Opportunities Exchange are both here to help you through the process, because ultimately we want to ensure the creation of sustainable shared service hubs that meet the needs of the providers in Indiana and in the regions that we're targeting. So just have to throw that out there. It is okay to have a lot of questions. We would love for you to have a lot of questions when you look at the RFP that you could then bring to the webinar next week, or send us in an email or come to our office hours for.
Natalie, do you want to just tell people how they can find out more about the hub? There were a couple of questions about where to go to learn more about how to access the Early Learning Hub. Should they just reach out to Ambassador Enterprises?
Yes, or if you just search for Indiana Early Learning Hub, very easy access if you're looking online, and then you're able to directly connect to them about any of the direct service questions that you might have.
Great.
All right. Well, if there are no additional questions at this moment, we will go ahead and wrap up and say goodbye. You guys all know how to reach us. My email is on there. We hope to see many of you on our office hours if you have specific questions. If you have not registered for the webinar next week, please register for that as well. And that registration link is available on the grant webpage. And take a look at that RFP, get started, have the conversations with your organization, and we look forward to talking with you more about this opportunity to create these shared service hubs to meet the needs of your providers. Sharon and Amy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.